I'm a second year medical student, and I'm here with Lanise for interview for Wisconsin Voices. So I'm going to let Lanise introduce herself and tell a story.
Okay, let me click this here. Well, I'm Lanise Chris. I'm a recovery coach at the Marshfield Medical Center in Weston, Wisconsin. I'm with AmeriCorps. This is my third term of service. And what I do is I help anyone seeking any kind of information concerning recovery, anything to do with recovery or anything to do with getting funding for home, if a person is homeless, whatever it is that they may need, that's what I do at this point. I'm also a certified peer specialist. That's deal with the mental and substance, but I'm not working in that field as of now because of my commitment with the AmeriCorps.
Okay.
I have
Um,
one term of service left with the AmeriCorps.
okay. Also wanted to just ask about your journey and what led you to um um Wisconsin Voices Recovery.
Well, I went to an event, and at the event they had something about the voices, what you all are doing now,
Mhm.
and if we would be willing to come on and tell a little bit about our story and our journey. Of course, I'm always wanting to be able to let people hear and see what recovery looks like and that it's possible. Even at your lowest, recovery is possible. It's just a journey you have to be willing to take. And that's kind of what this all came about.
Okay. Yeah, and that's very admirable that you're finally able to like share your journey to people who has probably been where you been through. And speaking of which, if you are open to it, like can you tell me more about your journey with substance use?
Well, my journey alcohol was my drug of choice. Of course, I've used other substance, but alcohol was my drug of choice. It started, I say, when I was probably 15, 16. You know how, I don't know if you know, but sometimes as youth, we think that you could test this and you sneaking and you doing this. And it's not going to be anything. It's just being a teenager.
Mm.
Okay. Well, that wasn't the case. I found myself liking it and not understanding what was going on with me because I myself was a child that wasn't raised by her mother and father. Okay, so I wasn't aware of any type of situations that it might have came about as a young person. I didn't understand trauma and ACEs and all of those things back then. I'm just a teenager having fun,
Mhm.
making enjoying my life. I'm thinking, and that right then was the start of my addiction.
Okay.
15 years old, not knowing it, but I'm here to tell you it was a start. I loved it from the first time I started drinking. It was because I didn't feel any of the being abandoned or my mother not being here. I didn't feel any of that. So that was the start of my addiction. And I'm going to be honest with you. I have a saying. It says I was addicted from when I was in my mother's womb. It was I was bound to be an addict in my from when I was in my mother's womb. And I know people like, how who could ever say that? You was just a baby. It's circumstances.
Okay.
Circumstances of my mother, circumstances of my father's, even though I didn't know anything about it, I didn't understand it. But because I am who I am today and the trainings that I've had and how I'm dedicated to everything about recovery, I understand addiction can start from the womb.
Okay.
Because if your parents aren't healthy, are they going to have a healthy pregnancy?
No.
No. Going to the doctor doesn't make just a healthy pregnancy. So that's kind of where all that comes from. But I don't want to bore you with that. But
Oh
I'm,
no.
this is
I'm not.
just my story, and I'm honest about.
No, like definitely not boring. I think a lot of people don't understand that circumstance, especially like when you're even before you're aware, can really
Yeah,
affect how, like the choices you make. Even like at the point you may not even feel like a choice, it's just something you do. But like you don't know
right.
how that even come about. So like if you're open to it, I'd like to talk about more like your childhood and your circumstances that you believe led you to describe yourself as an addict from the womb?
Um, well, from the time I can remember, my mother and from what I can remember as a little girl,
Yeah.
I I would see my mother and father, my mother being abusive to my father from the time I that's all I can remember of them. You know, I probably could have been one, two, three. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I always seen chaos.
Hmm.
You know, I've always saw that. And that's what I remember. And even though I wanted my father to be around, but I would always see my mother being very angry with him and very upset. Now I didn't know at the time that my father was an alcoholic.
Hmm.
Okay? He was from what I hear spoiled and an alcoholic. But of course I was able to grow up and see that he was an alcoholic. He died from alcohol withdrawals, DTs as they call them. Okay. So that was the case, but I didn't know it. But I just remember just always seeing abuse, more so her
Yeah.
than him. I never seen him. I just remember her
Okay.
being, but she from the story that I get, they're both deceased. She was angry because he wasn't doing what he said he was going to do. He wasn't being a productive person and being a father and a husband. I don't know because I'm a little girl.
Right.
Okay. So that right there was the beginning of me only remembering trauma, unhealthiness. But it was normal because this is what I saw. So to me as a child, how do I know that that's not normal? I don't know right from wrong at this point because I'm that young. Okay.
Right.
So in the process of that, I experienced childhood what they rape. I think I was 3 years old. I can remember it clearly. Of course, I've had gotten help to deal with it, but for years I didn't. So I can remember that happening at 3. I can remember telling my mother when I was angry, and I think had been drinking as an adult. I had been drinking and was a little buzzed, and I began to tell her what happened and figured she was to blame because had she not left me at home, and one of her friends comes in, then it would have never happened. I held them responsible because they're the parents. They're supposed to protect us. Okay, so that was embedded. Now these are two things that's embedded in my mind as a small child. Traumas that I didn't understand, but they're bedded in. And if that's what I saw as a very young child, can you imagine what was going on when my mother was pregnant?
Yeah.
Then I can remember my mother telling me, and this may sound awful. My mother was an amazing woman. Don't get me wrong, but she had to deal with her traumas to be that amazing woman. She told me at one point, you wasn't even supposed to be here. He raped me when I got pregnant with you. But this is her husband, right? Now you see, this is three different things that I'm experiencing throughout my life before full addiction kicks in. I don't have an option to me to have a healthy life because look what it looks like. Okay.
Yeah.
So these are some experience that I experienced. And even though a lot of families have what you call skeletons in the closet, secrets. I say a bunch of lies that needs to be talked about. People need to talk about these things and be able to freely talk about them and it not be an issue. But in my family, it's an issue. It's a whole lot of secrets what's going on.
Yeah.
And
Um,
in the process of that, my grandmother, for some reason, I don't know, I ended up living. I have 6 brothers and myself. In the process of being maybe 4, I went to live with my grandmother, me and my oldest brother, who's deceased now. And he had an addiction with drugs. And then my other brothers went to live with some other people in the beginning. So we were split up. So now I have abandonment issues. Now I'm like, you know, my grandmother, and she was a amazing woman. She was a stern woman that came off the plantation. So you can imagine what that upbringing was like. And even though she gave me everything that I needed, and even though she was strict, she lived strictly by the Bible. Imagine being raised by someone that grew up from a plantation era.
Hmm.
So you can imagine what that was like. You're to be seen, but we can see you, but we can never hear you. And the only reason why she was like that is because you had to be quiet or you could be killed. But since that's where her child life came from, she could only teach me that.
Yeah.
And of course, she wanted me to have more in life. And she was a hardworking woman. And my family is well-to-do people. We weren't poor people, but it still was a lot of trauma and things that went on. So now I'm at 15, and well, actually, my mother got shot by a stray bullet when I was 12 years old. So that meant it was going to take even longer for me to ever be able to live with my mother. Eventually, I ended up going to live with her, and my brothers came. But I was living with a stranger. I didn't know her.
Hmm.
And my grandmother told me, "You're going to live with her. That's your mother. And that's the way it's going to be. You don't have an option."
Hmm.
So I went to live with her. And then I found myself immediately being attached to her because now I wanted somebody to show me some love, what love looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it was healthy love, whatever it was, I wanted that. So I stopped drinking for a while. Um, my mother ended up becoming sick, and I had to go live with my aunt. Now, my aunt and uncle, he's a Canadian pro football player. So imagine we're living well. Well, come to find out, it's a lot of stuff going on in that house. We have access to in all the liquor you can imagine. It was liquor stores. They had owned all kind of stores. So we working in the cleaners in the liquor store. So I learned at a very young age to bottle up as much of the bag up as much of the liquor while we're working, and we're gonna hide it in our rooms. Nobody was ever coming to check anything. So we was drunk, stoned most of the time. Then you got marijuana, then you had acid, you had speed. I'm 61, so I came from the 70s where acid and speed was a big thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I was into. Um, yeah, and my journey just went on from there. Kind of went, we all were getting high, drinking and getting high. Never knew what cocaine was at this time. I never heard of cocaine. I think I might have been in my late 20s, early 30s before I ever knew what cocaine was. I can remember my cousins, them being on cocaine, but they were smoking it at the time. It's
Hmm.
called crack. They were smoking it, and I didn't know that they were unstable. I didn't know that they were losing it. It was an addiction. I'm thinking, well, they say, here, girl, try this. You won't have a worry in the world. And this is what they say.
Hmm.
So I'm like, what is that? I don't know nothing. I didn't know. I'm a square. I was a square. Even though I did things, I love school. I believe in education, but I'm what you call a square because I was sheltered from everything. And don't let me leave this out. I had a foundation of Christ throughout everything. My grandmother, my foundation was built on Christ.
Hmm.
So that's the plus out of all of my journey. So I try to crack. I ain't like it. I'm like, what is this? What this does not feel good. I try eventually, you try it every now and then. I'm like, alcohol is my thing, has always been my thing, but I guess we could try this. So I try it again, hid it for a long time that I would use it periodically.
Hmm.
Uh, Alcohol was just what I liked. Eventually, I started using it more, but I couldn't use it unless I had alcohol.
Using
That
what
was
more?
crack cocaine,
Okay.
but I had to have alcohol. If I didn't
Yeah.
have alcohol, I didn't want to use the crack.
Okay.
So here we go. We got two. Then I had the acid and the speed periodically, but I had a bad trip off of some acid. And I prayed and asked God that He would not let me lose my mind, and I would never try acid again. So I left it alone. He didn't let me lose my mind. I seen the elephants and dead people. I've seen all that. That's true.
Hmm.
Um, I was just totally in another, like another world. Everything was humongous, like giants. But of course it wasn't. But this is what the trip from the acid had me believing. And it was only by the grace of God that I was not crazy. Never came back from that. Because some people never come back from
Right.
these trips. I was blessed to come back.
Yeah,
Now
and
here I am experiencing crack cocaine. I'm experiencing it and I maintain because I don't know why I maintained for as long as I did, and it was never an issue. I've always believed in work and having nice things. Um, I don't know why that I was able to hide it for so long, but I was. My mother was a woman that didn't believe in any kind of addiction, didn't believe in any kind of mental. Everything was just that's just what you want to do, and you it's a bunch of crap. Went to a lot of treatment facilities. Um, I experienced with some of, I had a counselor. I was doing really well at one time in treatment, but the counselor, I ended up going with my counselor. And I don't think people know that not everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. And when he didn't respond like I wanted him to, like if you have a counselor that's helping you get over an addiction and you
mhm,
get in a relationship, first of all, you're not supposed to get in a relationship, right? With unhealthy people. And then you get into a relationship and then they end up using you and not being the person that you think, it only sends you back into, okay, this is another person that has hurt me. My mother, my father, anybody that ever means anything has only hurt me. So it sends you deeper and deeper down a hole.
right.
Um, Now I'm sinking by now to the point where I'm beginning to contemplate suicide even. You know, you can only do drugs for so long. I don't know about everybody. I can only tell you my story. And I can only tell you from experiences of people that I've associated with, even in my addiction. Because me and my cousin was going to do the buddy buddy suicide. I won't give her name because she's not here. We were going to do the buddy buddy. The only thing that saved us from jumping off that bridge, we got a call that a shipment of crack had came in and we went to pick it up and they offered us to test it. That
Hmm.
saved our life. And that's not a good thing, but it's the truth.
Right.
Well, we're here. I'm just telling you how strong crack can be. It stopped us from jumping off that bridge because we was able to go and get a free high. Now, um, even though I know suicide is a sin and it's something that this is what my beliefs are. Everybody has different beliefs. I'm telling you about my beliefs. You know that it's wrong, but you can get so far into mental illness, into addiction, to none of that matters. You can get that far into all you want to do is just stop feeling this pain. All you don't want to be the person that you are. You don't want to be an addict because the stigma comes with addiction. You
Hmm.
are the lowest of the lowest of people if you experience any of this. So that's something that I did not want to be. You
Okay.
are let down to your whole family, to the community, and sometimes people don't make it out. Some people take their lives, some don't.
Yeah.
I've been to mental health facilities seeking help, became angry in the process because you got to deal with reality and you got to face your truth. And who wants to feel that kind of pain, in the middle of being an addict? I don't consider myself an addict anymore, but this is where that's what I was then.
Okay.
Everybody has their own journey and their own story. I'm just telling you my story.
Yeah.
It was not a pretty story.
Yeah.
I
And
got married
mhm,
in an addiction. Worst thing I could have ever done. I always tell people never make major life changing decisions if you are in some type of addiction. That's just my belief, but I don't think it's wrong. I made a lot of choices that I should never have made when I was in an addiction and not sound minded.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And it's definitely, I think you definitely have like a lot of wisdom on that regard. I wanted to go back a little bit. So like, I guess what made you decide to like seek help, and was there any point where like you reached like what you would consider like rock bottom?
I wanted, I seeked help, but when I decided to get clean and sober, truly become clean and sober, was 4 years ago.
Was 40?
4 years ago.
4 years. Okay.
Now I left crack cocaine alone maybe 15 some years ago, right? Or
Mhm.
more. It's been more. But the alcohol, that was another story. 4 years ago, I was raising my grandchildren, okay? And I had started to see changes in myself. Like I would drink. I used to could drink a fifth in one stagger. You wouldn't even know I was drunk, right? But in the last 4 years ago, I started to imagine and think things like mentally, like seriously. I could be somewhere and I could have a drink. It wouldn't take much to get me pissed off. And I was starting, people could say hi. And to me, they were saying, who this B thinks she is.
Mhm.
Now they weren't saying that, but I'm just telling you what I was hearing. Seriously, I was becoming really violent. I had been put out of every bar just about in the town where I lived because of my anger. I was so angry. A person couldn't even say much of anything to me. And I looked at people as victims, not as human beings, as victims. And I knew then that I had to leave alcohol alone. I knew then I had hit the bottom of the bottom for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I knew that that's not who I was and that's not who I wanted to be.
okay. And yeah, and thank you for sharing that. So like what was your first, I think you mentioned that your first counselor perhaps wasn't who you wanted to be in terms of who could help you out with that. Like what was your first like initial like journey with like seeking like recovery? Like did you join any particular groups? And if you did, like what
I was in the 12th. Well, I went to recovery. Of course, you
yeah.
know how your parents make you go to recovery. And it was the 12-step recovery. When I started, it was only 12 steps. You didn't do the 12 steps, you would never recover.
Mhm.
That in the era that I came into recovery, I say that had to been I graduated in 79, so that had to been the 80s and 90s, 80s and 90s. It was only 12 steps. It was AA, and it was always a 12-step program. If you did not follow the 12 step, you would not recover. And that's all I ever believed in my life. Well, of course, I couldn't follow the 12 steps because it was too painful
Mhm.
and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Only thing I was a part of was this 12-step program. That's it.
Okay.
And of course, my faith. And that was so low till I couldn't even catch a hold of that. But that kept me most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it. 12-step program.
Okay. So like when you were seeking recovery, like did any particular thing like happen that made you want to keep going, or a time where you were like, okay, I can do this and like keep going?
Um, just wanting to be myself, just
Okay.
wanting to be rid of the addiction, wanting to be the mother that my daughters needed me to be.
Okay.
Um, wanting to deal with my traumas
Yeah.
until I actually started dealing with them and the pain became too much. Then I would, relapse. But I've always I knew that I needed recovery.
Okay.
I love the people in recovery. People who are really working the program. I loved it.
Yeah.
I was excited about it. But you got people that aren't really. programs.
Yeah.
But you have to make up in your mind that as hard as you went to use, you have to go even that much harder to be
Yeah.
clean. See, it's a lifestyle for me.
Right.
Now it's a lifestyle.
Right.
It's not an option. I don't play games about it. I still have my 12-step recovery Bible. I still believe in the 12 steps, but I'm open now to know that everybody has their own journey.
Right.
And it does not have to be one way.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
has to be surrender. It
And
has to be surrender. I don't care what you do, you have to surrender.
yeah, and I think that's a very good point. And so like you mentioned early on that you don't see yourself as an addict anymore, which is great. Is
No.
there any times where, like you mentioned that alcohol was sort of like something you turned to during like during your childhood or like when you were younger? Do you still feel that desire now, like in terms of stress or like anything where like you felt like, oh, I could use a drink or any kind of thing like that?
Well, if I would lie to you if I told you I never had a thought in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I and sometimes I've been sleeping and woke up and felt like I was smoking crack.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be honest. Um, but because of how I every day I it's recovery every day of my life. I don't say I have years. I don't say I have that. I just say one day because you can in an instant go back.
Mm-hmm.
And if people tell you that they never think about it, no, you don't think about it every day. No, you don't think about going to have a drink when issues come up. But it is a time that you will, that I have had that thought. But because I work a healthy program, I have I can pick up my phone and I can call someone instantly just like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very strong support system. And then I am also, this is just me, I am very, very strong into my faith and religion. That's a lifestyle for me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that helps.
No, yeah, I think that's good. I appreciate your honesty in that because, I think especially like when you were saying how it's an everyday thing, it's not like because you're right, things can change in one
Yeah,
day.
you don't get to say I'm gonna take this weekend off and working on this recovery. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, maybe people can. I'm just talking about people that's been in real addictions and every day I'm healing. I had to get therapy. I had to have medication. I've had real life breakdowns. I'm serious. This has been a real journey. It's a journey. Now I live a journey of being healthy.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes for me to be healthy, I'm gonna do just that. I don't allow toxic people in my life. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't do drama. I'm not arguing back and forth with individuals. You, people are allowed to feel how they want to feel, but
Okay.
I don't have to accept. If it's anything that's going to cause me something to make me say, mm, now I need a drink. Not that I do, but this can
Right.
happen. I
Right.
just, I'm just very aware of of my health and my a sound mind, and I live a clean life. A clean life. I'm talking about not just drugs and alcohol. Everything I do is following protocol, the law, everything. You have to change everything that you've ever done when you were in an addiction. You have to change it. And I'm willing to change it because it wasn't healthy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if a lot of people think like I think. I'm just telling you my story.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think that's definitely like an important thing. So you mentioned that you have like a very strong support system. I was wondering
very.
if that include family and like if so, like how has your relationship with them changed before you were while you were using and now since you've been in recovery?
Well, my family, like I say, they tolerated a lot.
Hmm.
I always been like a loving person. My family never turned me away. My mother had more anger with me being an addict than any of my other family.
Yeah.
But I've never been turned away to where I couldn't go to their house. But I would stay away because I would be embarrassed. You know what I mean? Or I
Yeah.
just didn't care. But I always felt like people were using me or something. Like I even felt like that with my family. So when I did get clean and I had conversations with them, I just always felt like somebody wanted something from me,
Hmm.
but they didn't. We talked. My family loved me. They're proud of me, which I always tell them, you don't have to be proud. I'm humble. I'm very humble when it comes to my recovery and just life in general. I'm not a boastful person. I'm not arrogant. I'm very, very humble. And most times I tell people, because they you get a lot of stigma.
Yeah.
And I'll tell a lot of times family members that don't know, some don't. If you don't know my story, then you don't have the right to label me as anything. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and where I
definitely.
came from and to where I am today, you don't get to label me as anything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but my family, some of them are support systems, but I don't tell all of my family things because not everybody in my family is healed. Not everybody in my family has had addiction with drugs and alcohol, but don't mean they don't have real life traumas and issues.
Right.
My family, some of them are very judgmental people. It's one way. It's either God or it ain't no. You don't get to be straddle the fence. You either gonna live like this or you gonna live like this.
Yeah.
And we're very religious people, and that can be a lot. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
imagine me being in an addiction and my family are these religious people. I mean, they live. This what they live. So you can imagine they were there for me, but they didn't understand. You mean to tell me it's a Jesus and you don't have enough sense to know that he can heal you? You know, though that kind of thing.
Right.
So they
Right.
didn't tolerate it. And that's why so many others in my family are suffering from addiction right now. Because they a lot of times people seek help. They're waiting for somebody to save them, right? But if you really knew Christ, you'd know he has places for people to go for help.
Yeah. And that's
He
definitely
can do anything, but it's places for you to get help. That's what, or you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's
And
place.
right. And that's definitely important. So it kind of touched a little bit on my next question. I was talking about like stigma. I guess like, you talked a lot. Well, you spoke early on how like you as an addict, people view you as like the lowest of the low, and like um even with oh, I think I may have frozen a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, little.
Yeah. So like initially you spoke about how like, people see addicts as like the lowest of the low, and like I was wondering like um you kind of talked about this too, how like listening to the whole story to get to know who the person is. I wanted to like I guess maybe narrow that in like within healthcare system exactly like going to if you ever went to the hospital, went to the clinic, like how did you face any stigma?
Well, I always, in the time that I was going, uh, like dealing with the mental health issues or even with addiction, period, people don't treat you the same. They treat you like you, they didn't treat you like a human being. It's like everything is clinical
Hmm.
and you don't have any rights. You need to go over there and sit down and you're going to do, and it's, if you needed something, you couldn't get it. Like you wait, you don't matter. Other things going on that's more important than you. Um, and that's true. That's even true today. I've seen people look down on people and how they treat people. I'm not that type of a person, but then again, I know what it's like, right?
Hmm.
But I don't think I'm just not that type of a person, period.
Yeah.
I have a kind heart. I have love for the people. But in this society and in the everything is clinical with people.
Hmm.
And you have to be you have to have empathy for people to be able to save people, right? That's just my beliefs. You cannot help people if you don't care.
Yeah.
Most times people say, if you haven't been through something, how are you going to understand? Because empathy and love does not, you don't have to have been an addict to just care about people. And people don't care. People just don't care. I
Yeah.
was embarrassed a lot of times to get help because how you were treated. A lot of times I would, you would be sick. People are so sick because they don't think people care. They don't think they're worth anything. So they just get to a place where I'm just gonna stay out here till I die. I know because I felt the same way. I got to a point in my life, it's like I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do and I don't care. I'm gonna go for the gusto. Either I'm gonna die or I'm gonna go to jail. Which one? Thank God neither happened. Could have, but it didn't. But I'm just telling you how low you can get
Right.
when you feel like people don't care.
Right.
The
And
stigma
right.
to mental health and to addiction.
Yeah, and that's, that's something that we thought about, but like we still see it happen a lot. And
Yeah.
like, so like, you mentioned, for people, who are going through some kind of, either it's mental health or like substance use. So like, do you have any like words of wisdom in terms of that? Like, not just with facing stigma, but like in terms of seeking recovery or like going through recovery and just anything you're willing to share about what advice you would
Well,
give.
what I did is I stopped caring what people thought.
Yeah.
I stopped caring what people thought of me. I stopped caring about what people called or any of that. I focused on being healthy. I didn't hold anything back.
Hmm.
Whatever was hurting me, I let it out. Just let it out. If I cried the whole week and had 10 boxes of tissue, I was not leaving until I got the help that I needed with a therapist, doctors, and I made them listen to me. I told them what I needed
Hmm.
more so than what they thought that I needed. I You have to fight for your recovery and mental health as hard as it took for you to fight for drugs. You have to. And my key thing is if you have any kind of, I can't tell people what to believe because some people are atheists. I'm talking about if you believe in anything other than yourself, zone into that.
Hmm.
Zone into that. And that also will help you. But I had just made up in my mind where I just didn't care what it sounded like and what it looked like. And that's how you have to get. You have to stop caring about what people think when you want to be clean
Yeah.
and some.
And no, and that's that's definitely great advice, especially like your point about you have to fight for your recovery the same way you fight for drugs. Because like
Yeah,
I don't think I mean I never really thought about it that way because like it's you have to be willing to overcome that addiction as which
yeah,
is something that's so like present everywhere, and
yeah,
like can really affect how you think about everything, so you really have it's always a constant battle, and I feel like you have to also have that same level of like dedication to like your recovery and whatever it is you're trying to do for yourself. So like
yeah.
speaking of your journey so far, like is there anything that you're grateful for, like in terms of accomplishments, or like what else are you looking forward to in the future?
Well, I'm grateful. When I got with the AmeriCorps, I'm grateful every day to be, everything that I went through was for this day, for this time,
Hmm.
for me to be who I am today.
Yeah.
Would I go back and pick to be an addict? No. But God had a plan for my life, and I had to go through that to be who I am today. And that's why I'm dedicated to making sure people know recovery is possible. I'm so thankful that I get to be the one that people get to look at and say, you went through all of that and you didn't hear my whole story, but that's not necessary. But I am alive today. I'm clean. I'm sober. I've restored. I'm doing AmeriCorps, but I have a career ahead of me. At 61, and I'll be
Mhm.
62 Wednesday of
Oh,
next
happy
week.
birthday.
Thank you. I have a home, a car, my daughters. I have two daughters, my grandchildren, they love me. We don't always get along, but I say they love and respect me. And who would have ever thought at all those 25, 30 some years of addiction that I would be here today? But I am. It's hard work. It's not easy, but it's possible. And I am so honored and thankful that I get to be the one that people know recovery is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And like I can't imagine like your entire story, but like it sounds like, this has been like you've made the best of what you could have done with it. And like,
Yeah.
and I think well that's all I had in terms of what topics I want to talk about. So if there's anything else that I didn't talk about they want to bring up or discuss.
Well, my hopes for the future, I'm doing it. I'm in school, and my dream, everybody knows, to be a substance use disorder counselor, and I'm on my way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. And yeah, thank you
Thank
so much for sharing your story. I still feel like it's only been like about 45 minutes or so, but I feel like there's a lot more to learn. And I'm glad that
Yeah, it is. It is.
yeah,
But I'm here. If you ever need me to come back and need some more information,
yeah,
I'm available. And
thank
I thank you for having me. And
yeah.
this was a long journey getting this done here, right?
It was, but honestly, it was worth the wait.
Thank you.
I and like, I think it's great you're also sharing parts of your story with everyone that you're helping with
Yeah.
recovery. And I really I respect what you're doing and I think it's a hard job. And your journey and everything else really led you to where you are. And I'm glad you're able to share that with me. And I think
Thank you. No
as
problem.
a future provider, as a future doctor, it's something that I want to work on and help people and your thoughts and you have to care about people to actually want to help people.
Right.
It is very
You
telling
do.
and yeah, and and it is important and it's something that a lot of people don't really realize and or they don't treat people who are going through something that you went through as
Right.
people. So yeah, well I
And, and,
really
and, and you're going to meet people as being a doctor.
yeah,
Some are going to be who they are. I mean, you're just going to have enough judgment to know what's best for people. That's it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I'm gonna end
Thank
the
you for
recording.
having me.
Yeah, of course. And if there's any questions or anything you'd like to talk about else, feel free to reach out.
Okay. I don't think so, but thank you and
Yep.
God bless you.
Yep. Thank you so much.